Good evening. This video is for History US 530 Discussion Board 1. In it, I address the following question. What is the impact of Christianity in the American founding? And I believe that the end result of Christianity in Americans' founding is this. This is the Handbook of Denominations of the United States. This is the 13th edition of it, and really that's kind of the result I believe that came out of it. Of course, the story of Christianity in America begins with Christopher Columbus, just as all stories of America really do, it seems like. What I found interesting was the depth of Columbus's belief as displayed in the Mark Knoll text for us this class. I didn't realize how devout or how pious he was, and really it seems like most of modern history seems to try to demonize Columbus as murderous and greedy and all sorts of villainous things. But he Knoll notes that Columbus was concerned about the conversion of those that he would come in contact with, and I thought that was very interesting. Seems reminiscent of an understanding of Christendom from this time period. Of course, the idea that all nations had a commonality in Catholicism, and that was an idea that was held by Martin Luther, which is interesting because we have to talk about Luther when talking about America, because while France and Spain were exploring the New World, Luther was in Germany, very upset with the conditions of Catholicism. And of course, in 1517, we have the famous pounding of the 95 Theses into the castle church door at Wittenberg, which sparked the Reformation. And this is important because Luther, of course, is where we get Lutheranism from, and we have the fragmentation of Christendom with the Reformation, and we have these all of these different branches and variations of Christianity starting to be formed during this time period. So while we are seeing America explored and colonies begin to settle in America in the next century, we have this fragmentation of Christianity. And England is the underdog in that, and we have the Tudor dynasty. Of course, this is the third in the legacy of the Tudors, Henry VII, Henry VIII, and then Edward VI, who was a Protestant. But Henry VIII, his father, was a devout Catholic and actually hated Luther. And then he needed a divorce, and so he broke from Rome and created the Church of England. And that's important to our story because the Anglican Church that his daughter Elizabeth I presided over is where a lot of the colonies that we have in England, or excuse me, in New England and in the Americas come from. And so these are just obviously a couple of the highlights from over the several decades, but I bring this all up because it's very important when talking about the beginning of the colonies and what was the Christian impact on it. It was denominational, and there was a lot of denominations that played into that. Of course, the Puritans were the biggest group, which makes sense because of the English, it being English colonies, and the Puritans were a group of Englishmen or English people who didn't like the Anglican Church. They didn't think it was pure enough, and so their critics called them, Puritans, the ones that wanted to make it more pure. And so sending them to America seemed like a really good venture for both them because it gave them freedom away from the Anglican Church, and it was good for the Anglican Church because it got them out of their hair, I think. Of course, Virginia was first. And Knoll notes that it was much less fervent than New England. And I think that's interesting to note. And this history of Christianity I've got by Justo Gonzalez, who is a historian and Methodist preacher. He talks about how how King James and the state got involved in Virginia, and so that they kind of quelled that Puritan understanding or belief, and that's probably part of the reason why historians note a distinct difference between the New England colonies, who were all Puritan, and Virginia, which was technically Puritan um, in its foundation, but it was taken over by the state. Of course, we have Catholics who got a chance to survive in Maryland, and then um, again, back to the Puritans, we have a guy named Roger Williams who just didn't hack it in Massachusetts, and he went to Rhode Island and started a new colony. Who was supposed to be about religious tolerance, and of course he was he had a Baptist church. He created a Baptist church there. The middle colonies, it seems to be a lot more um, tolerant. There's a lot bigger mix. Of course, they had the Quakers in Pennsylvania, but New York and New Jersey and Delaware, there's a lot of different colonies, and we don't have time to go into all of those. But it was just interesting to see that the variety of denominations and how each of the colonies in the New World had distinct religious flavor. But it's very important to note that Christianity was prevalent in the founding of every single colony down the line. So thank you so much for watching, and look forward to hearing your responses.